Hello, my name is Jan Van Schaik. I am posting an open video message for House Speaker Paul Ryan. Honorable Speaker Ryan, I find it unconscionable that you have not fully repudiated Donald Trump. In this video, I will use my own personal family story to help explain why Donald Trump must never be our president. But first, I'd like to make some comments about Donald Trump's campaign that will help put my personal story into context. Mr. Trump's rhetoric since October 11th, when he said the shackles have been taken off, is unparalleled in the history of American politics. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, Mr. Trump's discourse has become even more incendiary than I would have ever expected. The unshackled Donald Trump will stop at almost nothing in his insatiable quest for power, an ominous harbinger of what lies ahead if he's elected. He will do virtually anything to get elected, even if it means jeopardizing our precious liberties. He is a threat not only to common decency, but our constitutional republic. If he wins and promotes his dystopian worldview to rationalize imposing his will on our country, our basic freedoms will be in peril. This is especially true for women, given the depth of his misogyny that is increasingly coming to light in recent weeks. Mr. Speaker, if Mr. Trump is elected and erodes our most cherished liberties, what will you tell your children and grandchildren when they ask if you stood up to this tyrant or endorsed him and allowed him to be elected? Will you say you endorsed him for the sake of the Republican Party, choosing the party over the future of our country? Will you say that you take the Constitution literally when it says all men are created equal and that it doesn't apply to women? Speaker Ryan, you may not like Hillary Clinton, and you may not agree with her politics. You may be critical of her lapses in candor. However, just like any of our previous presidents, whether Democrat or Republican, she does not present an existential threat to our nation. Trump does. On October 13th, Mr. Trump said that his movement is an existential threat to the establishment. What the Trumpian movement really represents is a demagogic threat to the establishment principle of liberty and justice for all, as he marginalizes women, minorities, and those who don't agree with him. If you oppose Hillary Clinton so deeply, repudiate this demagogue and simply ask fellow Republicans to abstain from voting for president or to write in any of the other 16 Republican primary candidates. None of these primary candidates pose the existential threat to our way of life that Mr. Trump does. I feel so strongly about this, having immigrated to the United States in 1959 under the shadow of Nazi totalitarianism that swept across Europe in the 1940s and the threat of totalitarianism in the 1950s. My parents cared so deeply about our family that they wanted us to grow up in a land of opportunity and freedom. As a young boy, sailing into New York Harbor and seeing the Statue of Liberty, I was inspired to love the USA. Poor and uneducated, my parents, through sheer determination and hard work, along with the help of a compassionate American society, were able to realize the American dream. I don't want Donald Trump to exert his destructive influence on our country and imperil all that the Statue of Liberty stands for and make it more difficult for people to pursue the American dream. Mr. Ryan, I have visited Auschwitz. I know how cruel human beings can be to one another. People born in the USA have the good fortune of never having experienced the havoc wreaked by totalitarian government and thus may not be cognizant of how dangerous a demagogue Donald Trump can be. Trump is a threat not only to the Republican Party and our two-party system, but to the very fabric of our great nation. As responsible citizens, it is incumbent upon us to be courageous, putting human decency and love of country above partisan politics. I am exercising my freedom of speech and the courage of my convictions between now and Election Day to protect our liberties, despite my father being imprisoned for exercising his freedom of speech in Germany when he told the shopkeeper that he did not wish Hitler to liberate the Netherlands. And despite me being threatened with arrest for having written a question that I wished to ask Mr. Trump at a town hall meeting at the Pabst Theater in Milwaukee on August 16th. The threat of arrest occurred when I was calmly chatting with 3 Trump supporters outside the town hall meeting. Presuming that I was also a Trump supporter, they were curious about my questions and had wanted me to show the written questions to them. This is what I showed them, or the text of what I showed them. Mr. Trump, with your repeated provocative rhetoric about Mexicans, Muslims, women, our generals, and other citizens who disagree with your politics, how can you assure me that you will keep Americans from living under an authoritarian government like my family tried to avoid? Many of our citizens are concerned that under a Trump administration, liberty may be compromised. How can you quell the fears of millions of Americans that you may jeopardize the preamble of our Constitution, which secures the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity? After reading my questions, these 3 individuals called me a freak and said that they should call over 3 nearby policemen that they were referred to as the men in blue to, quote, take care of me. This is the kind of trampling of our constitutionally guaranteed free speech that Trump incites in some of his supporters. How ironic that my father, after having been arrested for exercising free speech, brought our family to America, where we could speak freely, only to have my freedom of speech jeopardized by Trump's movement. Speaker Ryan, my uncles Jan and Cornelis, who I was named after, were killed in Nazi Germany. My uncle Jan was hung by razor wire in a concentration camp after heroically fighting in the underground and standing up for freedom. I cannot let their deaths be in vain. As a patriotic U.S. citizen, I must do all that I can to help preserve the fundamental American values of liberty, compassion, and equality for all. Even after being threatened with arrest for exercising my right to free speech this past summer, I will not be deterred from my moral obligation to prevent this demagogue from being elected. Speaker Ryan, I respectfully request that you, as our great nation's foremost Republican leader, follow the example of many courageous Republican leaders who care about maintaining our constitutional liberties, and do all that you can to prevent this dangerous demagogue from ever coming to power. Any politician that appeases this dangerous demagogue does not deserve to hold elected office. Sincerely, Jan Van Schaik, MD.